Continue this there. There we
Well,
go. We're live now. We're talking about Metallica and U2?
sort of.
Sort of. I don't listen to either of those. I've
I
never
listen
been a
to one a lot
U2
more than
fan
that.
and never been a Metallica fan.
We do have some weird tastes here. So Pearl Jam was hot in the early '90s. So were Nirvana, and U2 were hot throughout from the late '80s to the mid '90s. Then they became a regular pop band, and their fans got older.
Yeah.
But it was still the same thing. What I don't understand is why the Scorpions are so popular, especially because nobody in Germany likes them, but they like coming here.
The Scorpions have been popular in Germany since they started, and that was in the late 60s.
I like
Yeah, but-
68, 69. Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody
I like
likes
those
them
two
in Germany. They
Scorpion
have to
kids.
get out of the country.
I don't know about that.
Like You, that was one of their songs. No one like you. I can't
Yeah, there's
wait
no one
for
like you. That's one of their songs.
What was their other one?
Well, there's been a lot of them. The ones that you
No,
guys
there's two
know,
that were hits in the early 80s that I
the
know.
ones that you guys know all came off the Love at First Sting album, which is Rock You Like
Yeah,
a Hurricane, which is their
That's
big
it. Right.
hit.
With the forks scraping out the
No,
eyes.
no, that's the Blackout album.
Ah.
Yeah, and Still Loving You, which is the one that gets airplay on 80s songs,
And so
radio
the
stations.
Winds of Change, they play that one constantly. It's like
Yeah,
if you played earlier Scorpions like Blackout Air and before, that's the good stuff.
I don't think we knew them at that time. Yeah, there's something weird because my dad's 74, no 73. My dad's 73, and he doesn't really like anything from the 70s.
Uh-huh.
The only thing he likes stuff from some stuff from the 60s, and his favorite band from the time was the Shadows. He loves
Whoever
the
they
Shadows.
are.
Hank Marvin was a very influential guitar player.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that. He was like Tony Iommi's favorite guitarist.
But he has no idea who Deep Purple were.
Now that's very unusual. I mean, just being alive in the 70s, you knew who Deep Purple were.
Okay, well, we were a fascist dictatorship until 1974.
Okay.
And my dad fought in the colonial war between 69 and 71, and he immigrated to Germany for a few months in 73. So he was never that interested in what was popular. If something caught his fancy, he would like it, but he was not specifically looking for new tastes in songs.
So we can understand why he doesn't know Deep Purple.
Jared doesn't
One of
know
my
Deep
Deep
Purple.
Purple. Yeah. My comic book question of the week was brought. I was reading Comic Shop News, which has this nice cover to the last issue of Bloom, which is an indie comic I've been buying that's good. That's the Medusa Spider-Man cover.
Uh-huh.
Ron Friends penciled it, of all people, too, but that's not my question of the week. My question of the week comes from, here I am, and I had read this, but I hadn't seen it before now. They're having Elektra take over as Daredevil.
What do you mean having Elektra take over? She's been Daredevil for months.
Oh, whatever. I don't even
You
know.
just haven't noticed because you don't read Marvel anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading it. I remember reading that Daredevil will be taking over from Elektra, but I hadn't seen a picture of it until this.
Yeah.
But that led me to ponder that do we have, because we've got 9 different versions of all the popular heroes. You know, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman. They all have 9 different versions of everyone. Have we ever had a man take over from a woman superhero? Like they could make a man Elektra right now.
Man Electra.
Why not? Make Elektra as a dude. They could do that right now if they wanted to, because she's busy being Daredevil. Have they? I mean, I don't know. Even it could be as simple as it's the dudes who are the most popular superheroes. But it's like there's not 90 different versions of Wonder Woman. Why not? There's 90 different versions of Batman and Superman. No Wonder Woman. And over at Marvel, there's not, even their most Captain Marvel, there's like one Captain Marvel, isn't there? I mean, at a time. It's not like there's a Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., Mary Marvel, the old ones. But it's like, is there like a tremendous variations of any female superhero? Like Wonder Woman's got a Wonder Girl, that's it.
Yeah, there have been 3 Spider Women. But I suppose that's it.
But that's like there's Spider-Man. It's like Spider-Man. There's Spider-Woman, Spider-Boy, Spider-Girl, Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, there are 2 active Spider-Man at the time, at present, right. Peter Parker and Miles Morales. There have been 3 active Spider-Women, although not always at the same time, except for one of those weird post Spider clone Spider-Man storylines.
More like a character like Wonder Woman or Elektra, or Catwoman. I think there's some Catman somewhere, but he has nothing to do with Catwoman.
No.
There's not a Cat Girl, Cat Woman, Cat Boy, Cat Man, or is there? Is it as simple as it's the dudes who are the most popular? So of course they get the most variations made of them, and it's all about selling underoos to girls too. It's like maybe it's as simple as we don't need to make a male Wonder Woman because we're already selling underoos of Batman and Superman.
Sure.
But that just struck me.
One of the reasons is probably the costume. You can't make a female costume work as a male costume.
That could be it too. It'll always somehow come across.
You never saw Zardoz, did you?
A classic.
But that didn't really work, did it?
No, it did not. That's true.
But suppose right now they decide, they decided to make a male Elektra. I mean, Elektra slot is open. Why not make a male? Has a woman superhero ever been replaced, even for a brief time, by a man? I don't know. I can't think of one.
I can't think of one.
Nope.
Yeah, it's just I never thought of that before I saw this picture of Elektra. Because Daredevil is probably one of the last male superheroes that doesn't have 90 different versions of him.
Yeah, and the fact that it's Elektra replacing him kind of makes sense given the character's history and the in-universe storyline. But we know that it's gonna end eventually, and Matt Murdock's gonna be back. But they're not to replace him with somebody else.
But I'm just saying, right now, couldn't they make a dude Elektra?
No.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, Elektra doesn't have a code name. Number one, Elektra doesn't have a code name. It's her actual name. They just call him Elektra,
just like they just called the female Thor. They can just call the dude Elektra. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm saying there's precedent for it.
Why would you want to?
I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to make a female Thor and call her Thor, besides the fact that Thordis is the worst name ever.
Also, Jane Foster is the worst character ever created by Stan Lee. Jane Foster was not created by Jack Kirby.
No. She's just another Stan Lee woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow I was also thinking about, because once again, thinking about this made me think about the woman Thor and this and that, and the fact that Thor wasn't Thor anymore because he was no longer worthy. And
when I'm not worthy of doing something, I don't change my name.
it's kind of silly. I always found that is such a I don't know what I'd call it, but it makes no sense. That whole Thor has to be worthy thing makes no sense. Because when you think back on the origin of Thor, the first story, he just found a stick. Some random guy found a stick, Dr. Don Blake, and he didn't even get to become Thor until he hit the stick against the wall in frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And then on it had said, whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall have the power of Thor. Now that little saying on the side of the hammer was meant to be nothing. That was just an in-story thing explaining who the character was.
Mm-hmm.
There was no point to it except to let the reader know in a new 8-page story that this is Thor. Then later on, when they introduced all the gods and stuff, of course, it was probably some other writer. I can't even remember who was like.
It wasn't. It was 2 issues later.
It was 2 issues later. He wasn't worthy.
Loki. No.
Oh, no. I mean,
no. The problem is, you find the stick. It turns into a hammer, and whoever's worthy has the power of Thor. That's okay if that was a one-shot story. And if you kind of think about it, most of the first Marvel superheroes, their origin stories, function well as one-shot stories, including Thor's. If there was no other Thor story after that, it would have worked. But then there's a problem. 2 issues later, they introduce Loki. And Thor goes to Asgard and finds all the other gods. And they all recognize him as Thor. So he has to be really Thor.
At that point, I think they just got to ignore that stupid poem on the side of the hammer. Because it makes that little poem on the side of the hammer only makes sense if some random guy finds the stick. As soon as they make up the story that, it was Odin teaching Thor humility, that poem on the side of the hammer doesn't make sense.
Yeah, now it's too convoluted.
That poem on the side of the hammer, that's not really part of Norse mythology. What they've really done there,
that is only in the
borrowed that from Arthurian mythology, and they've turned Mjolnir into Excalibur.
Right, that's a sword in the stone kind of thing.
Well, the sword in the stone is technically not Excalibur. The sword in the stone is the sword the lady put in the stone.
Same thing. It's like
they've borrowed this concept from something else, and it doesn't really work.
No, it's like I said, and then instead of ignoring it, you get writers who double and triple down on it, and they
always do.
Around it. It just emphasizes.
And that's how you get stuff like Crisis from Infinite Earths, 20 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what makes Walter Simonson smart. He came in and he said, "You know what? Let's get rid of Don Blake.
Yeah,
let's get rid of Don Blake and let's do actual Norse mythology in the comics."
Right.
I'm okay with getting rid of Don Blake, but when you do, you got to kind of get rid of that poem too. That if he be worthy, that makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
If Don Blake isn't just some random guy who gets the power of Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And mind the comics, we change our clocks back on Saturday. I just had to look. Good evening. Dr. Jones, one plays the thunder, then plays the bones.
Interesting.
And also reading these Norse mythology stories in the Neil Gaiman, Craig Russell stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thor's hammer is also much different in the actual Norse mythology than it is in the superhero stuff.
Right.
Because the Thor's hammer in Norse mythology is, he hits you with it, you die.
Yeah.
It's a real powerful magic weapon. But in comic books, it's a powerful weapon, but he hits people with it all the time. He only hit like other comic book powers. He can only hit people with it who can survive being hit with Thor's hammer.
Mm-hmm. The other ones are only worth the flat of the blade.
Yeah. Yes.
Plus,
that
Thor's
just
mythology was very much of a brute compared to the Lee Kirby treatment of Thor.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of influence from Wagner's operas, which kind of make the Norse heroes heroic, which they weren't. I remember there were discussions years ago. What made somebody worthy to pick up the hammer? And that person should not act heroically like we understand nowadays, influenced by hundreds of years of chivalry in a Christian tradition. Whoever holds the hammer of Thor should be a major asshole who kills without compunction. Especially because even within the Marvel universe, Odin is much more of an asshole than Thor is, and Odin is the one who made the enchantment.
Yeah, those old time gods were something else.
So Jane Foster should not be worthy of wielding the hammer, but somebody like Nick Fury should.
Let's see. That just goes to basically they've turned Mjolnir and Excalibur is what they've done.
Yeah,
I don't think that works.
My speaker is going crazy again.
Of course, Walt Simonson. Yeah. Of course, Walt Simonson. He got rid of Don Blake, but he then made it difficult for everybody else because he had one new character worthy of wielding the hammer because he was a great warrior. And the moment you have a second person pick up that hammer, you open the floodgates. Everybody's going to pick up that hammer now.
And then it becomes Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah. And it is what happened. Especially after Tom DeFalco decided that this random architect from Brooklyn should pick up the hammer.
Yeah. As soon as that poem on the side of the hammer means something, it doesn't make any sense that Don Blake picked up the hammer of Thor.
Just came up with the $1 million concept, talking about picking up the hammer and then everything becomes the Green Lantern Corps. The Green Lantern Corps are basically based on the Lensman from the E. Doc Smith. Mm-hmm. So now we can have a Lensman Norse mythology tie-in. And then Dark Horse would publish it because they published every tie-in that ever was. So.
Well, that time kind of
Page versus Aliens.
Yeah, that time you kind of see that in one issue of Planetary.
I don't know yet, so I don't know which one. I've only read like the first 7 or 8, so I probably haven't far yet.
Yeah, there's one issue of Planetary where they're trying out a sort of armory that replaces weaponry. And it's kind of it's a take on Captain Marvel slash Miracle Man, and it also the armory doesn't have alternate bodies, but it does have loads of weaponry. So you exchange Thor's hammer for something else in the story.
Gotcha.
So there's the Lensman.
Comic Crack is inventing a genre of music for Paolo.
Yeah, I can see.
Time.
Yeah, I can see if Atari Teenage Riot being compared to the noise a hammer makes.
Not sure if
isn't that Unster as a news button?
The Atari first comic I got this week, I bought only for its cover.
Uh-huh.
An Adam Hughes Hot Chica cover. And this is a third printing of Gun Honey #1. I actually I saw this cover on the internet a couple of months ago. And I was like, oh, it really caught my eye more than other. What caught my eye too is her lack of nipples. She really should have some nipples showing in that shot, but she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, of course, that would be wrong to show, nipples, women's nipples. Men's nipples you can show, women's nipples forbidden. Yeah, third printing already. Happy to announce you just signed up for Jared's Patreon. Cool. Thanks, Sal. Matter of fact, I just got an email that says you signed up. Very cool. And we're putting some more stuff up there. Third printing already. Yeah. Third printing already. Kind of. And the comic itself, though, was just okay. You know what? Remember last week?
Gold Key comic. It's a great cover. The interior's like,
Yeah. Remember last week when I forget who it was asked us who our favorite inkers were, and I was like, "Oh, that's such an old man question. Inking barely matters anymore." Well, I didn't like the inking on this book. It barely matters anymore, but when it matters, it matters. Let me show you some page. It matters because the color didn't really take over and do any of the lack of inking's job. And it was just kind of like very bland artwork with the storytelling was kind of mediocre. The artwork was kind of bland. The inking was bland. It wasn't terrible. It was just bland. And here's, Mind the Comics doesn't like when they don't get the buttons right. I also don't like when they don't get the folds right. And those folds are just bland. To draw suits, you really have to be able to get the folds right. And who was drawing this? Ang Hor Keng, Kheng. I think that's
maybe that's why superheroes are so popular with artists, because they have like these spandex suits. You don't have to draw all the folds.
A lot of superheroes.
I never thought about that. But...
yeah, cannot draw a guy in a suit. I've noticed they can't draw regular crows. They can over the years I've seen a very talented superhero artist be asked to draw a guy in a suit or somebody in normal street clothes, and they can't do it well. And one of the reasons they don't do it well is they don't draw specific clothes. They don't have like a morgue file of fashion, which is what you have to do if you're going to be drawing everyday clothes.
I've actually seen
the folds aren't terrible.
Right.
They're just not interesting. Mind the Comics. Yeah,
I've actually seen Steve Rue do studies just of clothes.
There are guys, Al Williamson and a lot of other guys of his generation could draw suits like nobody's business, because they were always drawing guys with suits, and
nobody could draw leather boots like Al Williamson.
Like here's another guy in this. Whoops. How'd Paolo get in a solo layout? What is that all about? What is that all about? Okay. Like this guy right here. There's nothing wrong with the folds. They're just kind of bland.
It's all right.
It's just kind of it's a bland shot with two bland people. It's like I can't.
If you put that guy back up there, if I didn't know it was from that book, I would think that was an image of John Constantine.
Yeah,
by C grade artist. Yeah,
he's got the generic John Constantine trench coat and pants. Like I said, and it's not in any way like it's not bad. It's just bland, and I think a lot of it was the storytelling too.
It's serviceable to write home about,
especially after that nice cover. But it'll go in my bought only for its cover section.
Even without the nipples.
Gun honey. I asking to be attacked by liberal. I think that's a topic. Female Thor versus Gun honey. How would I think Gun honey is actually played pretty straight. I don't think anybody's going to get mad at Gun honey. It's
So-
a woman
That
that does
sounds
a
like a
job.
product you would use to clean a gun barrel with.
No, she smuggles. She gets paid to smuggle guns into places. Like
Right.
if you're if you're trying to assassinate a mob boss, which is going on in here, and they search everyone for guns, she smuggles guns into places and hides them in the toilet. So then the assassin can excuse himself, go to the bathroom, and have a gun. So that's what she is. That's what a gun honey is. I get that's her. That's her
It's
nickname.
not titled to me. But, yeah.
But the answer to that question is very, very easy. How should women be portrayed in comics? However, it's appropriate for the theme of the story.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people have such a hard time understanding this.
Hello.
I am fucking great. Today I am Fox because today is the 5th of November.
The greatest tailor in comics. See, I'd call to me like Al Williamson would be the greatest tailor in comics.
Al
He
Williamson
hasn't been around in a long time.
The thing about Juan Garnido is when he does Black Set, he has the time to do amazing regular clothes design, and he puts them in furries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that the world of Black Set, they're not funny animals, but they look very, very realistic, and the clothes that he draws, that's what helps them sell the characters as realistic.
Yeah, I remember Comic Crack said they'll get mad at issue 2, though. Maybe I don't. First of all, I don't think anyone's paying attention to Gun Honey to get mad at it. Now, people only get mad at Marvel and DC books because those are the only ones that count. It's like I remember over the years, they're saying, "Oh, we need more female representation here and there," and you're like, "But what about this? There's plenty of female representation here and here and here." Oh, those don't count. And you point out all the indie books that have had female representation for 20 years. People are like, "Oh no, we want it in Marvel and DC." And it's like, why don't you buy the ones that there's already female representation? That'll make them as popular as Mother. Nah, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's getting mad at Gun Honey issue number 2. Maybe it's bland because they're using. Yeah, I think the artist just his storytelling just isn't up to snuff too. That's all it is. He needs more practice.
I think a lot of it's just rendering style.
There's a lot of rendering style there too. Yeah. Comics have been accused of over-sexualizing women. Yeah, they have.
Every medium has been accused of that. Film, book, print, what have you.
Right.
Yeah. Besides, if there's one thing true in action adventure, is that nobody needs to look normal.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone must look better than everyone else that you regularly see on the street.
Unless you're Johnny English.
Yes, but then again, it's not an adventure. That's a parody, not an adventure series.
Right.
And also, like, women get sexualized all the time because you're not allowed to sexualize men. In terms
of course,
of
nobody
wants to see that.
Yeah.
Although
I've seen I once remember seeing an interesting comment, which was, nobody likes beautiful men.
Yeah.
Women don't like beautiful men. Women like men with large bank accounts. Well, it's gay men who like beautiful men.
Yeah, I actually have given this some thought. Right. No, hold on. No boners in comics. It's not allowed. You can't. Another media do it doesn't make it right. Yeah. No, you know what it is? And I've thought about this. Women's beauty is in their physical appearance. Men's beauty is in their utility. And what I mean by that is
Batman's beauty is utility belt.
We find men beautiful who can do things. We find a man who can catch a football to be more beautiful than a man who can. We find a man who can throw a baseball to be more beautiful than a man. As a matter of fact, you can see a sort of, and it doesn't necessarily, money, of course, play, men are also admired for their ability to, provide for people. We'll put that aside. We're just talking physical beauty. If you take a beautiful woman and have her be able to dunk a basketball, it makes her no more beautiful. If you take a man, no matter what he looks like, and make him be able to dunk a basketball, he becomes more beautiful to us. That's one of the reasons I think men's sports are so much more popular, is because we find beauty in what men can do. So it's like, a guy just standing there, you're like, yeah, he's all right. A guy sinking 30-foot basketball shots, you're like, whoa, beautiful, man. And I think that's a real thing. So that's why women's beauty, we can sell it, but men's beauty is a tougher sell. But men doing things is not a tough. Men scoring a touchdown is not a tough sell. Men dunking a basketball is not a tough sell. A woman dunking a basketball is a tough sell because it doesn't make her any more beautiful and interesting in our eyes.
I can think of one comic off the top of my head where men were actually drawn in a more beautiful style and purpose, and that was A Distant Soil.
Anything Eric Shanower draws?
He doesn't go
overboard. Craig Russell draws? You see,
but Eric Shanower does not go overboard with that.
Yeah, but he draws some pretty dudes.
But yeah, he doesn't really go overboard with it.
Yeah, but I think that has to it's like. I think people found like Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man beautiful because of the ways he could twist Spider-Man's body. People found that beautiful. But to do that to the female figure, we do not find beautiful at all.
But see, then female figures are always twisted around where you can see their boobs and their butt at the same time, and the human body generally doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Women like the covers of guys on romance novels. Yeah. Like rich is a separate category. That's we of course know that money talks. But yeah, I remember when
you never see Uncle Scrooge, in a no shirt, in a loincloth.
Women do respond to male physical beauty. That is, it's not unheard of, but it's a very small percentage of men who meet the whatever standard of physical beauty that. You'll see women admiring, men's bodies all the time that are physically beautiful. But make them dunk a basketball and they're even more beautiful.
Well, also for years and years and years, and this is changing slowly, it's like comics and American superhero market were aimed at teenage boys.
Yes. That's also why women were drawn in skimpy outfits.
Right.
No doubt about that. No doubt about. Let's see, the next comic I got this week was also a little bit of a disappointment. It's New Burn #1 by Chip Zdarsky and Jacob Phillips, who is Sean Phillips' son. And the reason it was a disappointment was because in terms of craft, this is an A-level comic. Jacob Phillips really can draw well and can tell a story well. I'll give you a look at the art. It's just nicely done. Draws a bit like his dad, but not overly so. But just
what's the story about?
There's the problem.
Okay.
The story is about, in here, Newburn is an ex-police detective. And first of all, one of the genres I like that doesn't really exist in comics, but exists in TV and novels that I really like, is the quirky detective. From Sherlock Holmes to Columbo to The Mentalist on TV, the detective that there's always some hook to him, Sherlock Holmes is super smart. They have some weird quirk. Columbo is super smart but makes people underestimate him. The Mentalist uses his, mental show powers, or not powers, of observation to solve crime. There's always quirky detective. It's kind of
And then your
self-explanatory.
Kolchak that gets in trouble and just runs away.
Right. Kolchak is he's a reporter. There's always some little quirk to it. And I also like, straightforward detectives sometimes too. But this is an ex-com who now does investigative work for mob families. Sort of like when a murder happens in a mob family and they want to keep the peace, they call this guy to investigate what's going on. And some cops sort of give him a little leeway because but the problem was a character like that has to keep everything close to the vest. You would think a character like that can't be a flamboyant, quirky detective. He can't be a Philip Marlowe tough guy who mouths off to police he has to be buttoned up because he's dealing with mobsters and police, and he can't get on either of their bad sides. And that's what there was kind of no way into this character for me. It was just kind of like it was all plot. It was all him going on, and then at the end, he figures out that this young woman here had something to do with this crime, but he doesn't tell the cops nor the mobsters about it, and he recruits her. He's like, the end was like, and she like pulls a gun on him, and she's like, but she's not really going to do anything, and he knows that. And she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm so screwed. He's like, no, you're not screwed. I want you to work for me. That was a nice little twist, but you know what's coming now with the gruff older guy who has a personality who can't give anything away. And there was just nothing in it. Besides the fact that it was well done. Like craft-wise, this is an A-level comic. The writing was good. The art was good. The storytelling was good. It was just the story itself I found uninvolving. I have like no interest in seeing where it goes. I have an interest in seeing how it's done because, like I said, it was done really well. But how it's going, Michelangelo's David is the most beautiful a man could be. Yeah. He's pretty hot.
More so than the Fabulous Fury Freak Brothers?
No, more so than who?
The Fabulous Fury Freak Brothers.
Ah. So this is one I wish I liked better. I still might get a second issue just for the heck of it. Because like I said, I want to like it. Because it's so well done. I just didn't.
Yeah.
And one of those things. One of those. I hate when comics are like that. It's like it's so well done. I want to like it. Did anybody read? He did another one before. I forget who the writer was. Jacob Phillips, called That Texas Blood.
Heard of it.
I bought 2 issues of that. Once again, really well done. I just didn't find it involving. Something to do with the sheriff in Texas and feuds, and I can't even remember.
Probably got Gore Vidal involved.
Nah, yeah. Now he'll find all the issues for $1 in some back issue bin. Yeah, he always does that. There's some comic I pulled full price for 10 issues of, and he's like, "Oh, I just found these in the $1 bin," and he gave them to me 10 for $6. I'm like, "Oh,
yeah." There was a series a friend of mine was looking for that's kind of hard to find these days, and Terrence found him at one of his local shops, like $1 a piece. I was like,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's always like I don't regret buying the because most of the comics that I buy I'll never see again. And I don't scour back issue bins either. I'm not a back issue. People ask me, what comics I'm fans of. I'm a fan of modern comics. I was a fan of modern comics in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now the 2021s. I'm a fan of modern comics. Some people are like, oh, I only like comics from this era. I only like comics from the 70s. I only like Silver Age comics. Like, no, I like all modern comics.
I only like comics that were published in the second week of November in 1966 or something.
Yeah. I like
That would be
modern
very
comics.
specific.
The ones that are at comic shop this week. I've been doing that for 40 years.
I know a guy, and this is weird. He only likes one Italian comic, Western called Tex, which is very weird because I can understand if you come from outside of comics and you saw a character in a movie and you want to buy the comics featuring that character. But Tex is only a comic book. It's never been adapted into other media. So the only way you can read a text, you can find out about Tex is if you read a comic. And if you read a Tex comic, why would you not be interested in other comics? I mean, that thing's pretty formulaic. It's been the same thing for over 800 issues.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been published since 1952 or something.
Wow. You're right. You would think you'd try another comic, but I don't know. Some people are strange. It's like they don't want to take a chance.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they like, they get what they like, and they don't want to take a chance with anything else because they probably won't like it because it's not the one they like. That's a weird mindset that I don't understand.
You just described American sports.
What was that?
You just described American sports.
There is science showing people like whatever was popular when they were teenagers. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's not just teenager. It's whatever age you happen to be when you were first introduced to something.
Which is mostly teenager. That's what it is. That's mostly when we're introduced to stuff. Yeah. I've always said that too, because like, and when you're a teenager, things find you these days because all the marketers want teenagers. So things find you, which is once again why those comics in the 90s had women in skimpy outfits.
That'd be a good title for a horror series. Things Find You.
Things Find You.
Mm-hmm.
Sure
but there would be nothing supernatural. It would just be about targeted marketing.
Or it would be a good title if Ben Grimm became a detective. The Thing Finds You.
Detective Grimm.
Actually, that would be kind of fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Italian comics, this came out this week. What's his name? Guillaume March. How do you say his first name?
Guillaume March.
Guillaume March.
From Spain.
Laura from Spain, not Italy. Here, we'll give you the cover is the nicest piece of art. Not that the inside isn't. The inside is this is some old stuff he did as European graphic albums. You can tell this is before Carmen. And it looks very much. It looks more like a European graphic album than Carmen does. But because he formatted not only because he formatted Carmen for both markets, but because the layouts are very rectangular European lots of panels on a page. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see him before he kind of broke out of this format. But it was good stuff. It's about this is just sort of a slice of life story about this woman Laura who's dealing with unrequited love. So he doesn't get the chance to draw fantastical things like in Carmen, but it's well drawn and well told. And it's funny. It's one of those. It's before the smartphone era. There are some phone screens for you. It's those little tiny phone screens. It's funny how that dates something before the smartphone era and after.
Oh yeah. Computer monitors date things like nobody's business these days.
I think smartphones date things more than computer monitors. I mean, you're right. When I see a computer monitor, I'm like, oh, that's before flat screens. but they're usually in the background. I don't think computer monitors didn't change the way we interact with each other. Smartphones did. It's like we don't interact with each other any different with a CRT and a flat monitor. We interact with each other different with a smartphone and a pre-smartphone cell phone.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. It's like everybody interacts with each other on video now because of smartphones. Right. I thought it was around age 6 or 7. Nah, that's younger than because I was introduced to comic. Well, I probably read some comics at 6 or 7. But it was 10 I really got into it. 6 or 7 is a little young for being introduced to lifelong stuff, I think. Your name is Fawkes. Are you related to Guy Fawkes? We had fireworks here last night in
Only
New
today.
Zealand.
Just today. That's not his actual real name.
Paolo likes to mislead us with his names up there.
Yes.
He's been fawking with people's minds today.
Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot.
But
I see
I'm
no
not,
reason
yeah.
why the
I'm not
gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Which I learned from V for Vendetta. I don't think I knew it before then.
Quoth the Raven, Alan Moore.
But I don't know how many people knew that Laura was coming out. I think Comic Shop Weekly tipped me off to it.
And
I
Blaze, like every small publisher, they don't know how to do advertising.
Yeah, it's a Blaze too, so who knows? It was Image put out Carmen, right? That was Image, if I remember correctly. But they did put from the artist of Batman and the Joker on the top, so you know.
Seems like a waste being known for doing Batman and the Joker.
Oh no, I'm being known for doing Batman and the Joker opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, but it's going back to our early discussion about the pop music, the pop songs that made the bands more famous when other songs were better. It's the same.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Mobile devices are closer to people physically. VR will be the next big change for communication going forward. Yeah, I don't know how.
I'm not so sure VR is going to be the big change as AR is going to be.
Which is AR?
Augmented reality.
Okay. So that's just adding stuff to ourselves to augment this reality.
Right.
Or at least you'll be seeing a lot of targeted ads directly at your face.
Well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people have a hard time with strapping themselves into things. I think I mean, there are people who will get into it. No doubt about it. There are plenty of people who will get into it and escape. But I think the average person has a hard time putting on goggles or strapping themselves into anything or stuff like that. But who knows? I don't. And let's see. The Me You Love in the Dark has finally turned dark with issue 4. This is the one written by Scotty Young, drawn by Jorge Corona. Really like the art and the storytelling in it. And it's about a woman who moved into a haunted house. She's an artist. She's working on her next big show.
Yeah.
And there's a ghost or something in there that she's made friends with. And last issue became the lover of the ghost, whatever. And now things have turned dark. It doesn't want to let her out of the house. And I've been waiting for, the first 3 issues for it to turn, because at some point it's got to turn dark. Otherwise, it's just a story about a woman with a ghost boyfriend, which I wouldn't be opposed to. But being that this is an American comic and not a Japanese one, I knew it was going to turn dark. And sure enough, it did. But nice artwork. Good issue. I don't know how many issues this is going to be. Probably 6. I mean, that's what these usually are. Can't imagine it's a continued story. but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. First Scotty Young thing I've bought. And he's writing this one, not drawing it. So that's probably why I bought it. I'm not a huge Scotty Young fan in terms of his drawing.
I haven't read anything he's done, actually.
He only started writing a couple years ago, I think. Like he did The Middle West. I think that was his.
Mm.
That was another story about something. Oh, excuse me, I'm yawning now. The Middle West. Who wants to do a rip, read, and slab? Let me see what we got. Ooh, okay, we're gonna do this one. Magazines from October. Whoops, I opened the wrong thing. 1976.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Let's see. Where is share? There we go. Magazines from October 1976. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu 30, Star Reach 6, and Eerie number 80.
Easy.
Easy?
Yep.
Wow.
Real easy.
Well, let's hear what you got.
I'm going to slab Eerie number 80 because it has the best cover. Although I like the Jeff Jones cover on Elric there, but I like the cover the best, and I've already read that one.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to read Star Reach, and I'm going to rip up Deadly Hands of Kung Fu.
Okay. Who did that Eerie cover? Is that
No, that is not. Ken Kelly, maybe?
Okay. Let me see.
Wow.
I can't really tell. I don't know.
Let's find out. I don't know. That might be.
It is Ken Kelly, yeah.
I don't even know that name. Ken Kelly?
He's another fantasy artist. He's actually studied under Frazetta, and he's like semi-related to Frazetta.
It's Frazetta-ish, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, that issue is a Darkland the Mystic story by Starlin.
Oh, Eerie?
Yeah.
Cool. Slab Eerie, read Star Reach, rip Deadly Hands. Scott and I agree.
You know, actually now knowing this, it changes what I was going to do, because I was going to rip Eerie because it's not one of the magazines that I'm that interested in.
Me either.
So the question is, do I want to read Sword Quest by Larry Hama, or do I want to read Darkland the Mystic by Jim Starlin? Because I'm going to slab Star Reach.
I think I'm going to slab Star Reach too, and I'm going to rip up Eerie and read Deadly Hands of Kung Fu.
Well, there's another reason up the top of Star Reach I want to see it. Those two magic words. It says Ray Bradbury.
Oh yeah, look at that. I think I like the Star Reach cover the best. That's why I'm going to slab it. I'd like to read it.
That's a Jeff Jones cover. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the first actual solo Elric stories in the U.S., isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Star Reach 6.
Paolo's doing a little research before he rips one.
Pays off, doesn't it?
Yeah, he doesn't want to make a mistake here.
Yeah, but although not knowing is actually better for the game.
Yeah, it's fun because some of them I pick that I know, and some of them I pick that I don't know at all. These ones I don't really know at all. Okay, but that actually worked against Eerie for me because I haven't read a lot of Creepy and Eerie, and the Creepy and Eerie I have read, I've been. I mean, there's good stuff in there, but it's never been a favorite.
Yeah, I think this is the first officially licensed solo story featuring Elric in the U.S.
I do like that cover.
Stephen Grant plot idea, written by Eric Kimball and art by Bob Gould. Like other Star Reach stuff made by people nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of Bob Gould.
If it's Robert Gould, he's a famous fantasy illustrator.
Yeah,
Might be
He's
that.
not known for doing comics.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, might be. I'm not sure. If it's registered in the GCD as Bob Gould, he probably signed it that way in Star Reach. Yeah.
Or
So
they
yeah.
credited.
I don't know if it's the same guy. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think I'm
But
still going to reap up Eerie, and I'm going to read Deadly Hands.
You're on the same page I am.
Eerie, man.
Saul is on the same page as Scott. Read Star Reach, Slav Eerie, and Rip Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Everybody's on Scott's page, and Paolo and I are on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I'd never seen those magazines before.
Although it's not easy. In the past, I've made choices not looking it up before, and based on what I already knew. On this case, I already know that Sword Quest is a short-lived, almost fantasy series that was somewhat related to martial arts, which appeared in the final issues of Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. It's a 4-parter. I think it concludes, and I wanted to give it a read because I always have this fascination with obscure Marvel Comics features.
The Creepy and Eerie I have read. I read like the first 2 volumes of the Dark Horse reprints, the hardcover ones that are from the early 60s. And they're very much a continuation of EC Comics.
Very much so. And that's to say, I would give Creepy and Eerie the benefit of the doubt just because the caliber of artists are much higher.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, my friend Bunch, my friend Bunch is a huge Creepy and Eerie fan, but his Creepy and Eerie era starts in the early 70s when he was a kid. So all that, all that 70s Creepy and Eerie he loved. And I remember he's told me before, there's like a time in like the late 60s, early 70s where he really doesn't like Creepy and Eerie. But then Corbin and everybody like that starts getting in.
Gotcha.
And that's his era of Creepy and Eerie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that
material
era is very distinct from the stuff I read, the early 60s Creepy and Eerie.
Right.
That cover you chose, the magazine has art inside by Jose Ortiz and by Luis Bermejo.
Okay.
So yeah, that's good. I love Jose Ortiz's stuff very much, even though most of the stuff that he generated on his own or with Antonio Segura has never been published in English.
And I do have the Alex Toth collection of Creepy, and the Steve Ditko collection of Creepy and Eerie, and the Richard Corbin. So I have 3. It's not like I haven't read.
You're missing the best of the 4, though. The 4th one was the Bernie Wrightson collection, and that's
I didn't get that one for some reason. I didn't see.
That's the good one.
Yeah.
Not that the other 3 are bad in any shape or form, but
right.
Pick one of those 4, I'd go with Bernie.
But it's just kind of the stories that never appeal. I'm just not a horror guy, I think is what it comes down to. That's all it really is. Now that we have DC and Marvel Unlimited subscriptions, wouldn't it be great to browse a huge catalog of old magazines? Otherwise, how can you ever read that stuff? Oh, yeah.
I have a whole bunch of them in the other room there. That's how I read them.
But getting the rights to all of that material from the Warren magazines is a major pain.
Yeah. At one time, there was going to be a CD-ROM compilation of the Heavy Metal magazine. But Steve Bissett brought up the point, hey, you guys don't have reprint rights, and that killed it.
There's actually a site I go to. Oh, I can't remember what the name of it is now. I just went to it recently. You have to like sign up and they accept you. But it's an archive of public domain comic books.
Oh, you can find all the Warren publications on the Internet Archive.
Yeah. Well, this I forget the name of this one. They're like they do just comic books that are public domain, so you can read a lot.
Yeah,
of
there's a couple sites like that. But if you go to archive.org, the people that Warren actually put all their stuff up there.
Okay.
So you can find all the Vampirellos, the Creepies. The only thing they haven't really put up there that most people want to see is Famous Monsters.
Because that's still going.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. I thought they revived that.
A while, but then it died out again. So.
There's not every issue of Famous Monsters is in a public domain, and I think you can get a copy of the ones that are in a large bound volume made by those guys called Guandanaland Comics.
Not famous.
Oh, they have a Rook collection on Hoopla. I'm gonna have to check that out. I actually just ordered some physical books through my local library. You just go on their website and to see a book you like, you can order it, and some other library sends it over.
I was so disappointed. Getting ready to get signed up on Hoopla and make a list of all this stuff, and then that damned Adobe reader that they use for it is terrible.
It's just not good on the
it's
computer.
okay.
Like I read on an iPad and it works beautifully.
It's okay for text, but on a PC screen, it scrolls slower than molasses. It pisses me off.
But I think I took out what was that series? 7 to Eternity. Rick Remender and some really good artist whose name I don't know.
Jeromo Pena.
Who was that?
Jeromo Pena.
There we go. I took out like 3 volumes on that. Saul wants to go over to your house, Scott, and check out your old magazine.
All in boxes, stored underneath other boxes. And
I read Hoopla on the iPad too. It works really
well. If I had an iPad, I probably would like
Jeromo Pena. So I'll be reading that whenever the library gets them. I took out, let's see, what if I can remember. Actually, I can look at my library. I took out Marvel Visionaries Steve Ditko, because I don't think I've ever actually read that one. Let me see. I almost took out Luba again just for the heck of it. Oh, I took out X-Men Messiah Complex, an Ed Brubaker X-Men, just because I've never read an Ed Brubaker X-Men. And I took out the Sleeper Omnibus, the Brubaker, which is really good. I actually have all the issues of that. But I just like, I was looking up Ed Brubaker stuff, and I was like, oh, Sleeper Omnibus. And that's one of those, I looked it up after, that's out of print and goes for like $300. People want $300 for it. I was like, I'll take it from the library and read it.
Right.
Even though I have the issues right over here, I could read them, but I was just like, I want to see what the omnibus looks like.
If you steal it, how much is the fine?
Yeah.
Because it might be worth it.
It's not going to be $300, but then again, if you try to sell a library copy of it, you're not going to fetch $300.
No. I've gotten cheap library copies of things on occasion, but yeah, I was like, I could read my individual issues, but I'm like, I'll take the book out of the library. Why not? Have you guys ever read Sleeper by Brubaker and Phillips?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is good stuff.
I don't think I've ever read anything by Ed Brubaker that I can remember.
If you ever get a chance, read any of the Brubaker and Phillips stuff.
I might be wrong, but I can't think of anything that.
Well, if you haven't been reading mainstream, he mostly did Marvel and DC stuff.
That's probably why. I mean,
he did come from indies.
He was one of the 90s autobiographical cartoonists originally.
Mm-hmm. And then he started doing Vertigo.
What did he do for Vertigo?
I can't remember. Yeah, then he did Batman stuff, Gotham Central, which is the Gotham Cops. Yeah. And then he did Sleeper. First before Sleeper, he did a mini series featuring Grifter, which was a lead-in to Sleeper.
Point Blank.
But you don't need to read Point Blank in order to enjoy Sleeper.
And I think, and Sean Phillips didn't draw Point Blank. He may have inked it or something.
Don't remember. I know he didn't draw it.
Yeah, he didn't draw. He wasn't the penciler on it, though.
I'll just look him up and see if I can find anything that he's did that I've actually read.
Yeah. Messiah Complex was okay, although Brubaker's X-Men material, you have to read Deadly Genesis, which is a continuity implant. Features a new team of X-Men where the third Summers brother finally debuts. And then the follow-up to that is called The Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire, which is sort of related to the ongoing Marvel Cosmic series of the time. It was a 12-part arc and features Avak and Polaris and having to fight the Vulcan, the third Summers brother, who becomes Emperor of the Shi'ar.
That's what's good about the library. I just go, why not take it out? You know, if worst comes to worst, I read a few pages, don't like it, and return it. There's no harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm.
Started reading a Trekker by Ron Randall, and that's actually pretty decent.
I have not read that since the 80s, but I used to buy it.
I have the omnibus with everything that came out on paper before he started putting everything online.
I have a Trekker section over there in my collection.
I may have read some. Yeah, I've read some of the stories that Brubaker did in Dark Horse Presents way back in the mid 80s.
He did The Fall with Jason Lutz. That's one of my favorites. It's just a little crime story.
The only thing I've read by Jason Lutz was Berlin.
Yeah, he did Jason Lutz. I think he did Jar of Fools was his first thing.
Oh yeah, I haven't read all of that, but I've read a little bit.
There's like two volumes of it that aren't particularly big. And then I think he did The Fall after that, and then he went into Berlin. Wonder if he's doing anything after Berlin.
I haven't kept up with him, so I'm really not sure.
I find Brubaker so overrated. Yeah, I love Brubaker and Phillips, but I'm not a huge fan of his Marvel.
I also read the Dead Boy Detective series he did for Vertigo too.
Dead End something. What was the name of that one? Dead City?
I don't know.
Brubaker. Yeah, that was for Vertigo that he wrote. I forgot about that one. I bought a few issues of that and was really disappointed with it. I remember. Because at that time, that was some of
I haven't
his dream stuff.
Just looking through that, I haven't read much of Ed Brubaker's work at all.
He did a series called like Dead End City or something like that for Vertigo.
Sounds like me when I get up in the morning.
And I really wanted to like it because he just come out with I think The Fall was somewhere around, and I just didn't. He liked Brubaker's Daredevil run. Yeah, I've never read it. So
it's okay.
I don't know it.
I think I've ran to 5 issues of Daredevil in my entire collection.
Yeah, I haven't really read Daredevil since the Frank Miller run. I read the Miller run, then after he left, I left. And then I read the Miller and Mazzucchelli run, and then after they left, I left. I read some of the Lee Weeks stuff here and there. Lee Weeks is one of those guys who's just an A-level talent, but I don't think ever had like A-level writing to match his talent.
Nope.
Right. Can you just imagine what Frank Cho could do with a good writer?
Yeah.
But which one?
A good writer.
Frank Cho does know how to write. He just doesn't do it when he's working on properties that he doesn't own.
Yeah.
His writing just isn't as good as his art, is all it is.
No, it's not. That's
He
true.
can write competently, and I enjoy. Like, what did I get last of his? That James Bond story. What was the name of that? It was not James Bond. It was some spy or superhero spy. I can't even remember the name of it.
Don't know.
The stuff he's doing that he did right. Michael Cho's got some nice.
I
I've seen
like
some
Michael
covers
Cho's
by him.
art style.
Yeah, but but it was just okay. And
He also tends to throw in a lot of the same references over and over to the point it's like, Frank, come up with something new.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very pop culture-ish. Like I have on my shelf too his Shanna the She-Devil comic he did in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The story is competent. That's his writing is competent. His artwork is beautiful. So there's the divide. And speaking of another book I'm torn on, The Magic Order. Where is it? I like Cho too. It's American Manga Clare. I don't know. That's a foreign phrase I don't understand. Besides something clear.
Linclair is the clear line is the artist style that was associated with Tintin.
Okay. But The Magic Order, Volume 2. I bought Volume 1 and enjoyed Volume 2 and enjoyed Volume 1. Volume 2 came out and I was deciding whether to put it on my pull list or not. And I didn't, but they had an issue, sitting at the shop. So I bought it. And it was decent. The only thing I don't like about it is the physical comic. The physical comic is kind of crappy. It's got you probably can't see it. It's got like these dents in the side that are they're not quite finger marks. They're because the paper's so cheap and the staples are pulling on it. Gotcha. And there's a lot of oversaturation and darkness that I just didn't like the printing on it. Stuart Immonen artwork, which I liked. But I wasn't fond of the coloring. Let's see, who's the coloring? Sonny Go, Gho, is the colorist. And the physical, like, instead of having a splash page, they give us this weird credits page. It just makes me think they don't care about this comic. They care about the TV show and maybe a collected edition they'll care about.
Mm.
So it made me not, even though I want to read Magic Order #2, because I liked #1 well enough, the physical comic made me not want to put it on my pull list.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of like I was very disappointed in that. And the cover isn't particularly good. The cover is dark.
Covers
There's one good cover in the myriad of covers they have, but I didn't see. This was the only shelf copy, cover A, on my. So I was just kind of like, I was disappointed in the physical comic, and that's happened to me. That's the third time that's happened to me in 2 weeks.
I get it.
Yeah,
I completely get it.
yeah. But I think that's part of that is now part of the danger of all these cheap self-covered, and by cheap I mean the cheapest paper they can find. The comic itself isn't cheap. There's the problem. The comic itself is $4, and we all know that if you trade weight, you'll get it for cheaper. Sure. So if you're going to put out a crappy single issue package, I may as well trade weight. Even though I like the single issues better. So that's just a weird, pitfall of buying comics these days.
I get it.
Yeah. If I pay $4 for a comic, I want to like the physical comic.
That's why I like that format. Which publisher was it? Was it Vault? that made the oversized, not huge, but slightly
They've
more
been,
oversized.
Aftershock has been doing those graphic novels.
Okay, it was Aftershock then. Okay.
But I'll even take it if there's like a lot of the indie publishers put a cover stock on their comic.
Right.
Like even what did I get last week? What was that only killing the children one? What's that book all of a sudden I forget the name of? About the children.
Something's killing the children.
Something's killing the children. The prequel book that came out last week that I spent an extra $1 on the fancy shiny cover. I didn't even like the comic. I feel fine having bought that one.
Right.
But buying one where I actually liked what was in the comic, but didn't like the physical comic, I feel ripped off. So there's a weird. And if you give me a good physical comic with a shiny cover stock, I'll feel better about it, even if I don't like the comic, than I will if I buy a comic like, oh, this comic is crap. And every page I turn, I've got, this comic is crap.
Yeah.
Scott, you mentioned Jason Lutz Berlin. I need to read that. I have it on my shelf and need to read it. Yeah. Do you have all 3 volumes on your shelf? Because I actually
I haven't read all of it. I've read most of it though.
Yeah, there's 3 volumes of it. I actually you can get it all in one big volume now too.
Well, I was getting the
big one he's
the
got.
equivalent of the floppies that were coming out at the time, even though they're a little higher production value than the standard floppy would be.
I got the individual issues as they were coming out.
Right.
And I also bought, as they were coming out, the collected editions. Where's my Jason Lynn? It's somewhere around here. But what was funny was they came, because it took 20 years to get Berlin out. And it's like 22, 23 issues.
Wow. It's like Planetary.
Yeah, it took 20 years. He was putting out an issue a year. So it's like after 8 years, they put out volume 1. After 16 years, they put out volume 2. And after it was done, they didn't put out volume 3. They put out all of them in one volume. And I was like, huh? I want volume 3. I'm late to the party. What's Jason Lutz Berlin? It's a where's my copy of it? Should be up. It's a comic that came out over 20 years. Oh, there it is. Here's the 3rd volume.
It takes place in pre-Nazi Germany.
It takes place in like the early 30s in Germany. And it's a story of everyday people in their lives. And, there's communists fighting Nazis and everything. And they're just it's a whole bunch of people trying to get on with their lives as 1930, whatever, 3 Berlin is going on. So
and Gus is going to get in a time machine and go back and hit him upside the head for getting the buttons wrong.
Yeah. But one of I enjoyed this one a lot. But like I said, this is volume 3. And it was one of those cases where like I didn't want to buy the old. First of all, I like the slimmer volumes. I was like, because it's pretty big. There's 3 this size. And when it's in one volume. So I was like, I'm like, are they going to come out with a? So it was only after they came out with the big volume of them all that they came out with volume 3. And I was like, oh, good. But then, of course, I let it sit on my wish list for a while until I finally went, you know what? They probably didn't print a many volume 3s, and I better get it before it goes out of print. So I finally did that. I pulled the trigger on it a couple of years ago. Let's see, what year did this come out? This came out, where's the year? Oh, 2018. I probably bought it in like 2019 or something. Yep, historical fiction is what Berlin is. Definitely. I have the first 6 floppies, never finished. Yeah, it was on my pull list, so I got it every time one came out. Jarman is incredibly consistent for work going on. Yeah, he had that style fully realized. early. Haven't read Jar of Fools in 20 years, but me too. I enjoyed.
I remember liking what the Jar of Fools that I read.
I may have read Jar of Fools, reread it a decade ago. I'm not sure. I've only recently started keeping track of when I read things on my calendar. That way I know. That way I can say, have I read this in the last 5 years? I can look it up. Aha, he actually avoids most of the fashion stuff, lots of neck up shots, but does get some buttoning wrong, if I remember correctly. I bet you remember correctly. I find more what if fiction more interesting. Don't get me wrong, probably good stuff, but not my bag. Yeah, I'm not a fan of what if stuff that much, but sometimes I read it.
Depends on what it is.
I've had enough of the metaverse. I've had enough of alternate realities. I've had enough of 27 million different Spider-Men. I've had enough of the League of Reed Richards. But I do like Uber, but that's so far from actual historical fiction that it's superhero or super people in World War II. So I don't know if you can call that historical fiction.
You could.
In a way it is, because he's taking some real life events and saying, what if there was a guy who could destroy things with his mind at this event? But
one of the coolest what if kind of motifs I read was not actually a comic; it was a prose novel.
Oh yeah,
written by Paul Memont, and I can't remember the title of the sequel. But the first book in the series was the Chinatown Death Cloud Peril. And it was pulp stories, but it also had some people that worked in that time frame, like other authors that were factored into it, like Heinlein and Bradbury and Asimov, because they were working for the government in World War II, working on science projects and things like that. So it was a pretty neat story.
Yeah. Best what if, according to my LCS owner friend, was Conan in the Marvel Universe issue. I remember that being fun. What if when I was a kid, I enjoyed the What If series, but now all of Marvel and DC is a what if.
They went overboard. I mean, Conan as a what if story is fine, but when you plop him in the middle of Avengers, I don't know about that guy.
Marvel and DC are all what if stories now. They do a what if story and then they reset things. They do a what if story and then they reset things. That's what it is. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
What if the editors actually did their job?
I tried reading Roth once. I forget which one, because he sounded like he gets pretty high praise, and I forget which book it was. It may have been Plot Against, and it sounded like something that would be right up my alley. But I didn't make it a chapter through whatever book it was. I was just like, oh my goodness, I didn't like it at all. Which I found strange, because he seemed to be one of those people who I would like.
Which Roth are we talking about here?
Philip Roth, I think is his name.
Yeah.
The writer.
Mm-hmm.
Writing about Nazis in Jersey City in 1939 or something. Uh-oh. Sleepy's here. If you actually read Savage Avengers, it's way better than it sounds.
How could it not be?
Well, most of the stories are not that good. A few are well crafted. The premise itself is far from intelligent, but it's got some cool moments. If you're up for it.
I mean, if you go that route, considering that Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft, worked with some of the same elements in terms of cosmological horrors, does that mean Cthulhu is just going to show up in the Marvel Universe next?
Well, they have Shuma Gorath.
Yeah,
soon aliens will be in the Marvel continuity. Yep.
I hope the aliens eat everything in Marvel continuity and get rid of it.
They'll just get another alternate version.
Leave that damn acid blood all over everything and start over from scratch.
Mm-hmm. I'd go for that. Yeah.
And speaking of art being terrific, writing being just okay, James Stokoe's Orphan and the Five Beasts #3. I think Sleepy said the last issue of this was in April, so it's been a while. James Stokoe's art is a lot of fun. He does this cartoony, crazy, detailed, fun artwork, giant monsters, slobbering thing. Actually, there aren't giant monsters in this issue. But the story is adequate. It's, the master trains a new student to go out and kill her old students who have turned evil. There's nothing much. It certainly has a lot of
Never
flavor.
seen that story anywhere before, have we?
But it's not trying to be anything other than that.
Right.
And it does a good job with it. It's just the real selling point is the artwork.
Fair enough.
Haven't not read a single Stokoe book, but his art is incredible. The guy, Godzilla, the 50-Year War is the first thing I read by him, and that's very good. The writing on it is actually pretty solid too. I think it's the 50-Year War is the name of it, and it's about a soldier who's in the Japanese Defense Force for 50 years, fighting off Godzilla or whatever. So it's actually pretty interesting stuff. Philip, interesting alternate history. What if Charles Lindbergh were president? How it affects life for Jews in America. That should be right up my alley. That sounds like an author I like, but I couldn't make it through. I just didn't like the writing. I don't know why. It's a takeoff on an old martial arts movie, exactly. Like I said, it's not trying to be anything more than that, so it's a good. Right. So
it's fine.
Hey, Slippy. So, but it's not. The writing just isn't as good as the artwork. But that's the way it is sometimes. As we all know,
if he did his Steinbeck adaptation, you didn't like it. Would that be the gripes of Roth?
The 5 Deadly Venoms. That could be it. I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Don't give Marvel any ideas about having 5 different versions of Venom.
They already have 5 different versions. They have a Venom. They have a Venom planet now of the symbiote.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
man,
you're really out of it.
I am. I think they should change their name from Marvel to take Dark Horse and beating a dark dead horse.
Yeah. Marvel can do whatever they want. I don't care. There's plenty of non-Marvel comics to read.
Ugh.
Adam. More saying hello. Sleepy pulling an all-day online record. Yeah, I saw Sleepy dropped a video earlier today. Haven't watched it yet. Did you guys see Tim's video this week? He made a video looking back at his old videos.
No, I haven't seen that.
It was pretty amusing. Oh, Stokoe's Aliens Dead Orbit is pretty good. Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to check that out. But I didn't realize Tim used to do like skits in his videos too.
Yeah, he did a rather funny one years ago where he had a kiss mask on. It was kind of funny.
But yeah, he spent about an hour and 10 minutes going over some of his old videos.
No, I haven't seen it.
That 11th anniversary video. That was it.
So
check out Howler Mouse's channel for that one. It was pretty amusing. He went through some history. Yeah, he did greatest hits. And as he said, you get to see all the crappy equipment he did videos on.
Yeah.
I have crappy equipment. I only have a laptop camera and this.
Laptop cameras have been pretty good for a lot of years now. Tim didn't have one. He has what he called a potato camera, which I think is one of those 720, if that, digital video USB cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Tim is who's often on the show with us, Howler Mouse.
Right. As the Monty Python said, some men call him Tim.
That's why I use that Tim the Sorcerer as our little icon. I wonder how many people get it.
I never even noticed, to be honest. Never even noticed.
Some call him Timnity.
And they also call, in the Magic the Gathering game, there's a card called the Prodigal Sorcerer that people call Tim, or at least they used to in the 90s, because of Tim the Sorcerer in Monty Python. Tim the Sorcerer.
Yeah, somehow I don't think Howler Mouse was the name printed on his birth certificate.
No.
Like, really?
Well, Silver Age Dave outed Bub's Comics, his real name, the other day.
Whose comics?
Bub. He changed his channel's name from Bub's Comics to Bub's World.
Yep, Howler Mouse's real name is Tim, so we call him Tim sometimes.
In orbit. Know that one.
My name is Tim. My mama called me Tim. My friends call me Tim.
So, Paolo, what were your best comics from that con you went to?
Man, it's kind of tough to decide. I think I'm going to enjoy reading the Dracula book by George Bess.
Have you got to read any of them yet?
Not yet. The schedule I've been on, I have to wake up at 6 in the morning, and then after I get out at 4 p.m. But I don't feel like doing anything. I also had to do the Car magazine this week, so. But I want to try that one. Also, the Elric book from Titan, which reprints the first actual Elric comic book story that came out in France before Elric debuted in the Conan comic.
Okay.
Who's the artist on that?
Drouillet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the founder of Heavy Metal magazine. Is always a good choice.
Right.
That thing was actually before it was turned into a comic. It was sort of an art projection thingy that was in a museum in 1968.
That is strange. None of us have stage names. Kind of unusual. That is true.
Not in this industry, Damien. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Speaking of what you just mentioned, Paolo, I saw a video on YouTube. It was a very early video that Richard Corbin did.
Mm-hmm.
It was Dan, and it was before the movie Heavy Metal, but you could see certain elements of it showed up in the animated movie.
Yeah, Dan was serializing the early issues of Heavy Metal. And I think it had been published even before in one of those magazines.
He even used the term Lochnar, and it was like, oh, that's where they got that from. So it was just interesting to see because it was so early in his career. It was pretty neat.
I did buy Richard Corbin's book adapting Edgar Allan Poe stories. So that's also going to be fun to read.
Was that one published by Marvel?
Was it Marvel?
I have a Marvel volume, a couple of Marvel volumes of that, but I think he also did some with Dark Horse.
He did. Yeah, I just wondered which one was the Poe one.
Yeah.
And he also went back and redid a few things over the years that he'd done before as well.
Yeah. Revisited some of the stories. Let's see, another comic I got. Radiant Black. We're on issue 9 of this. And this was sort of the all talking and sadness issue.
So it's the Morrissey issue.
Yeah. Because as you can see from this, what's been interesting about the plot of Radiant Black is, again, it's got about a guy who finds a suit, gives him superpowers, and maybe somehow he'll have to save the world with this. Yeah, definitely not a great cover.
The thing that gets me about the cover is just the title is Radiant Black, but the font is in a light blue.
Yeah.
It's like my brain's like, it should be black.
The cover, I understand the cover, and it's symbolic. It's just not eye-catching. Because what's happening on the cover is like the guy got the radiant black suit, was trying to be a superhero, hanging out with it. He just moved back to his hometown. He's like in his mid-30s, a failed writer, moved back to his own town, somehow hanging out with his buddy, somehow gets this radiant, and his buddy's the screw up, and he's the responsible one, even though he was a failed writer who isn't that responsible. Gets the radiant black suit. Like issue 4 or 5, he gets hurt so badly that he's going to die hurt. So his friend, the screw up, takes the radiant black suit, and they go on with the story with the other different colored radiants and how they're going to have to save the Earth from these aliens or whatever. But meanwhile, his buddy is in the hospital dying. And so this whole issue was him dealing with his buddy in the hospital dying. So that's where we get this, symbolic cover, which is nice in its symbolism, but not a very good cover if it wants to get you to buy the book. And it goes through and we kind of go away from this big space story and take a look at his everyday life and how he's dealing with his buddy. And who hurt his buddy was this woman who was in the radiant red suit. And they're supposed to be allies, but whatever, things went on. She ended up killing him, or almost killing him. He's in the hospital dying. And she's trying to make up with Radiant Black because they're supposed to be allies along with these other 3. And it ends with his buddy, the new Radiant Black, getting a chance to maybe save his friend. So I'm guessing the next story arc is him going on a quest to save his friend's life, because they were at the end of this, they were pulling him off life support so he could die naturally. And the Radiant Black guy was like, no, leave him on there. I think I can save him. I've seen this in a cartoon, and I think I can do it. That was one of my all-time favorite Stephen Wright lines. Do you guys remember the 3rd Bob Newhart show that was just called Bob that took place at a comic company?
Nope.
Now, was that one the one after the one that had Tom Poston in it?
Yes.
Okay.
It only lasted half a season. There's maybe
I don't remember as much about that one, but I remember a little bit about it.
It was pretty good. I, of course, liked it because it was taking place in a comic book company. And there's just...
I'm sorry to go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
What was that?
Didn't they have a episode where they went to like a meeting of the National Cartoon Society?
They may have. I don't remember the
individual. Like there was a bunch of famous cartoonists that showed up, like Sergio Aragonés was on.
I think I just saw mention today
Jack
that
Davis might have been
Jack Kirby made an appearance in the show.
Okay.
Looks like a WC sign.
Water closet. Yeah, it does look like a water closet.
Do covers affect sales anymore? I don't think they do as much. Stephen Wright's a comedian. Okay, and back to the Stephen Wright line. There's this one point where they're doing a Thanksgiving show. Okay, so it's typical Bob Newhart wackiness, where at one point in the plot to get up to, it has something to do with the Thanksgiving parade. Mm-hmm. They jump into a cab. And they're like, come on, we have to get up to, 93rd Street as quick as possible. And Stephen Wright's the cab driver. And he just looks back at them and goes, hold on. I've seen this in a cartoon, and I think I can do it. And he just delivered the line perfectly. And it cracked me. It cracks me up to this day. That's the one line I remember. For all we know, if you have PC, you are right. I saw this in a cartoon once, and I think I can do it.
It's hard being a Stephen Wright fan and an Adam Sandler.
But yeah, I don't know how much I think comic book covers affect sales in a minor way. Well, I don't know what minor would be these days. Like this week and last week, I bought 2 comics just for the covers. Now, I haven't done that in a long time. But those are 2 extra sales those comics had just because of their covers. So it can affect sales. I just don't know in what sort of big way it affects sales. He wishes. He wishes he was Stephen Wright. So I think companies depend on all these alternate covers now. But that's affecting comics in a different way than having one comic with one good cover that attracts readers. But like
I just thought of something. I'm not as familiar with the market, but did you ever see variant covers in manga?
No, because they're all books. They're not comics.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. They have a completely different system. But I don't think the cover to Radiant Black issue number 9 affects sales at all. Maybe the cover to Radiant Black number 1 would affect sales, but number 9, I don't think so. Because you're either buying Radiant Black number 9 or you're not. They've either all because nobody picks up issue number 9s of anything today. You just don't. I do, but I'm rarity. I picked up, my first issue of Ice Cream Man was like issue 19 or something. But I've discovered, over my lifetime that marketing wise, anything that appeals to me is not appealing to the overall audience. It's just not. My taste is so different.
I agree. I'm in the same boat.
Right.
It's like everybody else wants this tiny little thing, and I want like an oversized European album format.
If your marketing plan appeals to me, you need a new plan.
You want to make money? Don't pay attention to what I like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the way that I know those are my tastes. Sometimes they cross over to mainstream stuff.
That's kind of funny. Do you remember the movie Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thoroughly convinced that me and my friend Gary were the only 2 people in the world that actually liked that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out that both Michael Kaluuya and William Stout liked it. Okay, there's 4 of us now.
Yeah. There's mine in the comments. There's like you and 2 other people who want Jared Osborne variants. I actually made a Jared Osborne variant of one of the Spider-Man number 1, the dollar edition, and put it on eBay. And I think 2 people actually bought it. They're like, wow, this is so cool. So I got 2 fans out there who liked them. We'll see more variants on collections and graphic novels, I would guess. Marvel already has 2 covers on omnibuses. Yeah, but I don't think there's anyone
one for direct and one for non-direct.
I don't think there's anyone buying 2 copies of omnibuses because of the I think they're appealing to 2 markets. They're appealing to the direct market with the original Steve Ditko cover, and they're appealing to the bookstore market with the modern Alex Ross cover. I want one. I was one. Yeah, he was one of the ones who bought the Jared Osborne variant.
Well, let's make it clear. We want a variant Osborne comic, not a variant Jared.
Yeah. They don't need 2 of me. One with short hair who talks like a Marine.
God.
I want to ask Sleepy Reader this question because he wasn't here earlier, I don't think. The first thing we discussed was this Elektra taking over his Daredevil led me to the question, has a male character ever taken over for a female character? Like right now, you could make a male Elektra. Just like they made a female Thor, you can make a dude Elektra, since Elektra's... And I was trying to think if any male character has ever taken over for a female character. Because we've got the opposite all the time. Because, like, I think it's as simple as the dudes are more popular. The dude superheroes are more popular. The sexy Jared and the business Jared. There we go. Variant Jareds. But I think it's like, you know, we've had females taking over, or female variations. It's like, you know, we have a million female Spider-Mans. But we've never had a dude Wonder Woman.
Well, there's Wonder Man.
There is, but that's just because they wanted the trademark.
Same character, right?
Yeah, I don't think any male character is it's like there's never been a cat man who took over for Catwoman. There's never been a black cat dude who's taken over for the black cat.
I can't think of it.
But you know, it could be as simple as there's more male characters, so, and they're popular, so of course they're going to make female. Like, and you know, there's a woman Elektra, dude Wonder Woman. I'm scared. Exactly. But it's never done. It's as far as I know. It's like right now, I think they should make a dude Elektra. Why not? There's no reason not to. Except who's going to buy it? I mean, there is that reason. And making female, you know, and making female Daredevil means you can now sell underoos to 8-year-old girls with female Daredevil on them. There was a weird Wonder Man when Gene Colan drew Wonder Woman, but he didn't take over. Okay. Yeah, I don't even remember him. Lots of old school lit has very few good female. That could be it. It could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as there's no female characters to build around to make Electro, right? Electro was that's what I was thinking. There's a female Electro, but like there's like Harley and her gang of Harley Quinns, but I don't know if that were there dude Harley Quinns in there? Male Electro is just Oedipus.
Yeah. Not that it would be that interesting to follow his adventures in a Daredevil comic.
Were there dudes in the gang of Harleys? Does anybody know?
Don't know.
And most of the female characters don't have a family like the male characters do. Like the Wonder Woman has supporting characters, and she's got Wonder Girl, but there's not Uncle Wonder, there's not Wonder Aunt, there's not Barbarian Wonder Woman, time displaced.
You realize this is going to come out in about 4 months now that you mentioned it.
I'm visual. I'm going to
somebody there trying to Barbarian
into reality. Yeah, male roles still carry some extra status. They may. Harley's late period. How many good female characters from Kirby till the fourth? Yeah, well, there's Uncle Wonder. Yeah, Uncle Wonder. Why not? Well, there's not that many famous characters. Well, now the movies are making characters famous, so we're gonna have to see how that affects everything.
Well, Kirby created Sue Richards and Jean Grey.
Right, Big Barda.
No, it was asking before Fourth World. So at Marvel, in the 40s, it did not. All of the characters were male. Even the Boy Commandos were all male.
But there were plenty of female characters, just not in the superhero books. There was as many comic books for girls as there were for boys in the 40s and 50s. It wasn't until the 70s that number changed. Sue Richards, the wife. Yeah, that's all she was. But we just don't know any of them. Like Betty and Veronica are two of the only characters we know from that era.
Mm-hmm.
Who have survived to this time, but there were tons of them. I mean,
Katie Keene and
do you think the romance comics must have had continuing characters? I just don't know any of them.
They didn't.
Yeah.
The things that Marvel kept publishing with females in romantic relationships were more humorous.
Right.
Patsy Walker and Millie the Model were humorous.
They were the Archie sort of style stuff survived the longest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
they didn't. The romance comics didn't have ongoing features. Otherwise, that would defeat the purpose of the story.
Yeah,
which they live happily ever after.
Right.
And I don't think the romance comics lasted that long time wise. Yeah, Kirby did lots of romance comics. He was the first one. He and Joe Simon invented the genre.
Mm-hmm. But they held on.
Little Lotta were around for. I forgot about. They were around for a long time. You'll
find a lot of strong female characters over the years. They're just like you said.
Little Lulu is known internationally.
They existed in the 40s and 50s. They just stopped existing in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
That was my point. We kind of lost all those. If they had existed all this time, there might be a Dude Dot and a even littler Lotta.
Jake Lotta.
Sheena the Jungle Queen. That's right. She's still around even. The recently canceled Children Around had a male Marvel girl named Marvel Guy. There's one.
Yeah, but that thing was stupid.
Sheena the Jungle Queen predated Wonder Woman. Yeah.
Yep.
So
did Phantoma.
Being that only superheroes survived past the 70s, really, in sort of U.S. and pop culture, all that stuff is seen not to exist anymore. Jake LaLotta, female boxer. There we go. We're building out her little Lotta family now.
It's a lot of titles you have to come up with.
Yeah.
Sugar and Spike.
And the last comic I got this week was The Silver Coin #6, which is now an ongoing series.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, I really liked this issue. It's drawn by Michael Walsh, who draws every issue, and he's got a different writer each issue. This issue was Joshua Williamson. And it was a haunted video. Each issue is a done-in-one. It really reminds me of the mystery comics from DC and Marvel in the 70s. That just revolves around this. The Silver Coin is just a reason to drive the stories. Like this is the story about a kid in is this the 70s or the 80s? I can't remember now. That's video games, so it's the 80s. He's playing something like Street Fighter 2, not like so it's the 90s. Something like Mortal Kombat. And there's arcades still around. So it's about this little kid who's wants to play these video games. He's hanging out with the bigger kids. The bigger kids are kicking his ass. The security guard kicks him out. So he finds the silver coin and puts it in the machine, the arcade machine, and starts becoming a really good fighter. But of course, unlike those mystery comics of the 70s, there's no happy endings to be found. So of course things go terribly wrong for this little kid. as he gets sucked into the video game. And it's just a fun, done in one mystery horror story. So, like I said, it reminds me of, a story Mike Kaluta would draw in House of Mystery or Ghosts in the 1970s.
All right. I always like that catch line. Do you dare enter the House of Mystery? He's like, hell no, I'm going to stay out here on the porch, man.
It seems sometimes the 60s, American comics. It's really the 70s. It was Archie Comics still went after the girls. Yeah, all through the 70s, Richie Rich sold millions of comics. So it was really sometime in the 70s that comics became an all-boy, which kind of annoys me sometimes when people are like, comics are an all-boy thing. It's like, well, if it didn't become if it wasn't for boys, comics wouldn't exist anymore. They were the last ones buying comics over here in the U.S. We wouldn't have comics if it wasn't for superhero comics and boys buying them. Sometimes I hear people saying that as a criticism of comics. Well, they only make superhero comics for boys. I'm like, well, that's because they were the last ones holding out buying comics. If it wasn't for them, the battle would have been lost and there'd be no comic industry.
It's not even a case of they were creating comics for boys. They were creating comics for boys who liked speculative fiction.
Yeah, who liked superheroes. That was the one genre that survived. And believe me, those little kids who liked, those little boys who liked superhero comics were not popular. They weren't popular with the girls. They weren't popular with the other boys. So whenever I hear like a criticism of, comics being only for boys, I'm like, really? I was there.
Like saying that, Harlequin romance novels were only for women.
Right. I was there when teenage boys were the only people left buying comics, and they weren't being praised for it. And nobody was saying, nobody cared that they were the only ones buying comics, and they were mocked for being the only ones buying comics. And now you're like, oh, you should make comics for everyone. It's a crime you don't. And I'm like, oh, you were the person who back in 1978 was making fun of the little boys who were buying comics. I was there.
And then the person who says you should be making comics for everyone, have you looked lately?
Yeah. They don't even look. Like, when they say comics, they mean Marvel and DC comics.
Right.
That they make other comics for other people doesn't matter. You can go to a Comic-Con, you get 5 players for every comic book fan. Yeah, half or more are female. The companies have to be looking at the casual female. They have to be. You would think so. But a lot of those cosplayers are from anime.
Yeah, and a few of them are actually professional models using this as the launch pad for a career. The thing is, they can look all they want at these people. They're not going to spend money on comics.
Right. There is that.
Especially if you notice that, I'm dressed like so-and-so character from the Marvel movie. Okay, that tells me everything I need to know.
Mm-hmm. But at least some of them you could interest in. A small percentage, maybe. But it's funny. It just all the comics I just showed off. I was talking to Carl, who is my editor, who I work with at Bad Idea Comics, and he called me on Wednesday. We were doing some work. I was like, I'm just back from the comic shop. He's like, what did you get? Now, told him the comics I got and told him what they were. And he's like, that sounds like a grown-ups pull list. And I was like, yeah, it really does. That's why I don't matter. And most comics are still mostly for teenage boys. All the Marvel and DC stuff, or at least. Because a grown-ups pull list probably won't have much Marvel and DC on it. Came across a channel where a guy has been filming the cosplayers at conventions for the past 5 years. Wow. Hey, they make good film subjects. They're starting to spend money on comics again. Who's they? The cosplayers or or just because conventions are. I imagine cosplayers don't spend money on comics, not at Comic Cons.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that's where they buy their comics. So that's where they'll be. I can't imagine too many cosplayers go to the comic shop every week or every month. But when they're at the Comic Con, they might get some things that catch their eye. We all know comics are a hard sell.
Going off on a tangent, I looked at a list of upcoming comics-related TV shows, and especially on streaming platforms. Good God, there's a bunch of them coming. There were over 150 new ones.
Comics related to TV shows?
No, TV shows related to comics.
TV shows related. Comics, women more in shops now, more owning shops around here. You're in like Nirvana for comic shops.
Women have been buying manga for years. They just had no interest in American comics, even if they don't have superheroes.
What's up with that Ramon Valabos book at Bad Idea, Jared? He's notoriously slow. But which one is he doing? I can't remember. Which book is it? Is it Monster Kill Squad? Is that the one he's drawing? Or is it? I can't remember. You're gonna have to tell me which book it is. Yeah. There's nobody owning more comic shops around here now, men or women. Just none. I mean, during the boom times in the 90s, there must have been at least half a dozen. First of all, I'm in Rockland County, which is the smallest county in New York State. It's way down the bottom next to New Jersey and the Hudson River. But there was at least half a dozen comic shops in this county.
Yeah, there are more comic shops in New Jersey than any other state.
Yeah, now there's two. And there have been two for the past 20 years, the same two. And the one I go to is even like not even opens. It's open like 3 days a week. So, Saga brought in tons of women. Hopefully it comes back.
Someone mentioned Saga. That means we have summoned Gore Vidal.
I was going to say he's going to show up any minute now.
Yeah, 72% of purchases in comic shops are made by men with 30 to 50-year-olds, the target age category. Yeah. 59% of purchases in chain stores are by men, with 13 to 29 is the large category for men.
Yeah. This is the problem. The U.S. industry, they let themselves be defined by what is supposed to be a niche service.
Yeah,
they're not. The comic shop was always meant to be for specialized readers.
Right. Yeah, I never buy what's popular either. My LCS owner is I have no idea. Something with dinosaur.
Dinosaurs on it. So.
Yeah, superhero buyers were heavily male. 78%. Manga buyers are more evenly divided. 50% male. 40%.
I saw a video on YouTube the other day that really warmed my heart, and I can't remember the name of the guy that did the channel. But he was asking, and this may have been an older video, it could have been a couple years ago, I don't know, but he was asking other YouTube comics channels to list their favorite Dark Horse titles, and he had a whole bunch of different people on there. And at the end, both his daughters, and they couldn't have been more than like 8 or 9 years old at the most, really loved Usagi Yojimbo.
That's good. I don't think there are 15 comic shops in New York City.
There are. My friend Randy sent me a map that showed them all. There was like 22, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know only of the big ones and a couple of small. I personally know of about 8.
Yeah, New Jersey is chock full of comic book shops.
Dash Shaw's cosplayers books are a lot of fun. What if we're born a generation later, we cosplay geeks instead of miserable Gen Xers? They are. Yeah, he said there aren't 15 shops in New York City. Yeah, I don't know. I know I can name the ones I know. Jim Hanley's Universe. There's two of
There's
those.
Hamleys. I don't even live in New York, and I know some of these. There's
Oh no,
Midtown.
there's only one Jim Hanley's Universe. There's two. What's that one that's on 40th Street? Oh, I can't remember now. The big one that gets all the signings. Midtown Comics. That's it. There's two of those.
There's that. There's St. Mark's has come back.
St. Mark's is back?
Yeah.
Okay. There's one
the
Park Slope Comics or something like that. That one I know of.
Yeah, there's a
It's a
couple.
pretty big one.
Yeah, some of the ones I'm thinking about have actually closed too.
Yeah.
There's Escape Pod in New York City.
There's a few stores. Oh, many closed during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm in the Bronx. Okay. Yeah, there's Midtown.
I can't remember if Escape Pod Comics is in New York City or not. I don't remember. There's the Koch Warehouse, which is not a typical comic book shop.
Yeah, that's in Brooklyn. That's not really a comic shop. Or a warehouse that invites people in to buy comics.
Right. It's Forbidden Planet.
That one in Staten Island that was one of the one of the New York Warriors shop closed a few years. Comic Book Jones or something like that. That was a pretty big shop. It was only around for a little while though.
It would.
Oh yeah, let's not forget Forbidden Planet. There's another one.
It would take some digging to find that.
Roger's Time Machine closed.
Meanwhile, I'm gonna go. It's midnight here, and I have to wake up in 6 hours.
All righty.
So see you guys later.
Have a good night, Paolo. We're gonna hang around for a little while longer. So
okay. Mm-hmm.
We'll catch you next week. Bye.
I just looked up comic shops in New York City on Google, and there's a bunch here I've never heard of.
Okay.
It doesn't surprise me since I don't live in the area.
It doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah. Bulletproof, I've never heard of.
So there's got to be more than 15.
No,
they won't be within walking distance.
On this one here. Yeah.
Down south here is a new rash of comic toy store openings because of real estate crashing. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
have a good sleep tight, Paolo. Night, Paolo. Nighty night. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Don't let ambush bug bite. But if you think of the size difference between New York City, let's just use this number just to make the math, and because I think there's at least 22. Portland has at least 15. New York City is a lot bigger than Portland. Yeah.
Man, the Feuerstein, you know them? That was my comic. That was the first comic shop to open in my M&M Comics, by Marge and Mike Feuerstein. That opened in 1981. I think it closed in 1998, somewhere around there. Really, and by the mid 90s. It wasn't that good a shop, but I really liked Marge, and I always went there, and she had my pull list for years. But that was a good shop. Like I said, it was the first one that opened in my area. Mother and Son opened it. Mm-hmm. But kind of over by the early 90s, the son, Mike, wasn't as interested in running the shop anymore. He was hustling Beanie Babies, I remember at that time. And he kind of had a little bit, he was one of these guys who, I think he was a little ADHD. He was always kind of looking for the next thing. And it was a baseball card comic shop, so he was really into cards too. But nice guy. And his mother, Marge, was the nicest person in the world. And then, I think it was the mid 90s, she was running the shop by herself. Mike had gotten married and moved off and was doing his own thing. He grew up in New City. Of course I knew them. Mike was into baseball cards. Yeah. I'm from Rockland here too, so that's where I went all the time. And like I said, by the what really killed the shop too, like I said, she would always get my pull list stuff. But the racks weren't as full as they once were. Because what happened was, I forget her husband's name. Really nice guy. He used to hang out in the shop too. Like I said, I was 15 when I first got into the shop, so I grew up going and talking with him every week in the shop.
All right.
And he was like the nicest guy in the world too, and was about to retire. And they had their whole Marge and her husband had their whole retirement planned out. You know, they were either gonna close the shop or Mike was gonna take it over again or whatever. But she and her husband bought a plot of land on this lake, da 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 da, and then her husband died suddenly. This is like in 1990, I don't know, 5 or something. He just had a stroke, had a heart attack, and died. And of course, it just wrecked her.
Sure.
You know, she kept the comic shop going for the next couple or few years just to have someplace to go and something to do. But she was never the same. And she was, like I said, she was the nicest woman in the world, but she was just not the same after her husband died, as you might imagine, because they had all their plans. They'd retire. They had a piece of land bought. They were going to move up to this lake. They were retiring there and grow old together.
Right.
And that all, I always, like I said, she was the nicest person in the world. And just to see that happen to anyone is just rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the Feuersteins in Nyack, Mike and Marge. I think Marge is still alive even. My friend Rob, who I went to the shop with all the time, sent me a link once to her.
Did you watch the documentary that was done about a shop in New York that was called Alternate Realities?
I did not see that.
New York City. Yes, it was somewhere in New York State. It wasn't New York City.
That was the one that was in Yonkers, I think.
It might have been the owner's name was Steve Odo.
Right.
It was.
And he had a shop, and eventually was in a flea market. And before, yes, I did see that.
That was. I like that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Used to go to M&M Comics every week, starting in. It opened when the shop opened the summer I turned 15. But didn't have a ride there because Nyack is about 10 or 11 miles from me. Rode my bike there a couple of times in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend Rob turned 16. My birthday's in August. His is in March. So he got his license before me and immediately was driving. He couldn't wait to get out of his house and drive. So I think it was soon after he turned 16 that we started going to M&M Comics every Saturday. And we just did, and he's like my one friend from high school because we, both love comics too. And I still, except for schedules recently, I still meet him at the comic shop every week now, because now he lives in New Jersey and the comic shop we go to is in Pearl River. So he drives up to it and I drive up to he drives up to it and I drive down to it, and we meet and hang out in the comic shop for about.
How far?
We've been doing that since. What was that?
How far of a drive is that for you?
About 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Somewhere in there. Yeah. Not bad.
Sleepy just asked how many shops we have in my area. It's kind of weird because there's literally a shop like 2 miles from my house, although it's not one that I really get excited about. It's
Right.
There's that one. The one I've been shopping at for 30-some years. God, wow, 30-some years now is actually about a 30-minute drive away.
Right.
So there's, let me think about it for a second. Within a 30-minute drive, there's been a bunch that's closed over the years. 6 maybe.
Wow. Did all the time.
About 6. Couple of them are nothing to get excited about. It's like 4 good ones and 2 ones.
Yeah, I never went to the Spring Valley Flea Market much, so I missed that guy. I used to hear about him, but I never actually went there because I wasn't much of a back issue guy. Closest me to one. It's weird when people say to me too, how many comic shops are in your area? It's tough for me to decide what in my area is.
Right.
because if you count like 2 within a 20-minute, there's 2 in the county that I know of. But I'm 35 miles from New York City.
Right.
If it wasn't New
York
York
kind of
City,
changes everything. Yeah.
right. If it wasn't New York City, those would probably be considered in my area. Like,
Well, then also too, it's like what some people consider their areas, like what can they get to easily, either on foot, subway, or
right.
maybe a
There's
short
that
drive.
too.
And then there's people like me that if I live in an area, I'm going to check out every freaking bookstore in a 100-mile radius.
Right. Exactly. So that's what I say. What is in my area? Because also, like, I know there's a comic shop in Ossining, New York, which is right across the Hudson River to me.
Mm-hmm.
So as the crow flies, that's 8 miles away. But as the car drives, I'd have to drive up to the George Washington Bridge or down to the Tappan Zee Bridge, cross the bridge, and drive up. It would be a 30-minute drive at least to get to that shop.
You need drone delivery, is what you.
So it's like, is that one in my area? Technically, it is, but I never go to Ossining.
Yes, driving wise, not so much.
Could I never go to Ossining because there's a river in the way.
Right. And we just lost Jared, evidently. So now you get to deal with me until he comes back. Sal brings up that New York City was dangerous in the late 80s and there's no go zone.
Kicked me out.
I remember when I visited with Mike Kaluta, and where he lived at the time was just a couple blocks off Broadway. What was this year? This is 2001. God, that's 20 years ago. That's kind of scary. I didn't feel dangerous at all, but then again, maybe I didn't know enough to be like to have contacts. So the only city I've really ever been in that I felt dangerous was in certain parts of Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Baltimore is a dangerous city.
Yeah, 27 miles one way actually seems very doable to me, only because I commute into New York City when I go in.
Right.
So it's like that's just a nightmare commute because like, it takes me to go 38 miles door to door takes me 2 hours. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
New York City was dangerous in the late 80s. No go zone back. Yeah, I didn't go to as a kid, my parents never went into New York City. So I never did. So I never got to any comic shops or anything in New York City. When I was working at Marvel, of course, I was in there all the time. So went to all the shops and all of this and all of that.
I would like to have a time machine and go back and visit a lot of the science fiction bookstores that used to be open in New York City back in the 70s. That long since closed now, but just to see what they were like.
It's not always a matter of perception. When someone in the neighborhood says you should get out of here, this is a dangerous neighborhood, just go over to the next block.
If a local tells you that, yes.
Yeah.
It's like
that's not perception.
Too bad we can't stay, baby.
Yeah, I didn't even go to Albany, let alone New York City when I was a kid. Yeah, we never went to the big city much. And I've known people who the people in the neighborhood have said, listen, don't walk down this block, go over a block. This is a bad neighborhood. It's a bad neighborhood right here. So it's not always a matter of perception, but I understand what you mean. And sometimes the reputation of a neighborhood can linger past its actual.
Sure.
Hell's Kitchen hasn't been Hell's Kitchen in a long time.
Doesn't that also apply to Brooklyn? I mean, I don't live there, but understand it used to be a lot rougher than what it is now.
As the guy has said on a walkthrough on the PBS show, Brooklyn is a big place. Nobody knows all of Brooklyn. So there were bad areas of Brooklyn.
Gotcha.
Brooklyn itself was never bad.
Okay.
You know, Brooklyn's big.
It just seems to me like I've heard a lot of news articles and things where certain areas of Brooklyn are becoming really gentrified.
Oh, there's plenty of money in Brooklyn these days.
Gotcha.
People who don't live in some places have an exaggerated perception. That is for sure.
Oh, that's true. Not just of walking down the street being dangerous, but just about anything.
Yeah.
Texas is a good example of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
War Vidal may back me up on this, but I have noticed it's not within the United States, but foreigners, and this is generalizing, and I realize what happens when you do that. Foreigners' perceptions of Texas are vastly different than Americans' perceptions of Texas that aren't Texans.
Yeah.
Very different. Yeah.
I would guess so. Just like foreigners' perception of New York is that it's all New York City, you know. That's just because that's what
they realize, 20 miles away, you've got farmland.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
Same with New Jersey. People think it's one big concrete jungle, but there's a reason they call it the Garden State. Yeah.
One big smelly industrial park. But it's not. You may think it's butter, but it's not.
I will say that the stereotypes of North and South Dakota are pretty much true. Because I've met both people that live there.
There's a whole lot of nothing going on.
The only thing, North Dakota is really odd because it's just visual monotony for miles and miles and miles until you get to the Badlands. And then it's so vastly different. It's like you've arrived on a movie set.
Wow.
It's like a little oasis of visual interest in this, vast desert of nothingness.
Huh. Let me see. By the way, these dark cards right here, from there to there,
mm-hmm.
It's how many of those paste-up mashup cards I've made so far. A few hundred.
I was going to say, have you counted them yet and see how many?
I haven't not counted them, but I know there's a few. I could look at the scanned files rather than count them. But
gotcha.
We've got Star Wars number 12, Tarzan number 227, and Conan number 40. All cut up. And the next one I'm going to do is this battered old copy of Avengers 158. It's going to be made into Magic the Gathering cards, which I wish was a George Perez issue, but it isn't. It's a Sal Buscema, Pablo Marco issue, which is good enough. I like Sal. But we'll see what we can do with this in making.
I wouldn't necessarily want to cut it up, but you know what might be a good comic for making cards with that would be Madman by Mike Allred.
There's no battered old copies of that.
That's true.
It was really let's see, where's the Joe Kubert stuff?
Just to come up with something that would just be so off the wall, it would be amusing in and of itself.
It's the Joe Kubert art in that Tarzan was just so fun because there's even some stuff that becomes let me see, like abstract art that like there. That's just one of the native's hands with his and foot with the jewelry on it.
Right.
So it becomes this. There was lots of pieces like that. Let's see. A wolf's head and Tarzan's leg. Just
you could sell those for big bucks, and you could be the next Roy Lichtenstein.
Yeah. Just some feet walking away and a balloon. Like, yeah, we're gonna get that Avengers one next. Let's see. My perception of Texas is a lot of housing developments outside Houston. Oh yeah, I've heard that, but I've never seen it. I remember when New Jersey was a toxic waste dump. Yeah, not now, of course. Cul-de-sacs upon cul-de-sacs, New Jersey. Need you to make DZ cryptozoic cards. Yeah, that'd be cool.
I could use Claw the Conqueror.
But I actually had to buy. I've been making so many cards. This is what I use to glue them down.
Right.
And I actually had to buy. This is a brand new roll of it. This is how thick a new roll is, and it comes with one of these blue burnishers. And what's funny is, I ordered it from Amazon. It's the only place I can get this stuff. It doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
And my sister lives up in Orange County, New York, and she told me that they've built a lot of Amazon warehouses up in Orange County in recent years, which is why we can get things so fast in the area. So it was Thursday morning. I decided I needed more of this, so I went on Amazon. This roll cost $50, by the way. That's
ouch,
not cheap stuff. But I was like, all right. And it was like 7 a.m. And they were like, if you order within the next hour and 10 minutes, you can get it today. Not even for like an extra price.
Right.
Just because I'm a member of Prime. Just today. I was like, oh, okay.
Sure.
Why not? So I ordered it. It didn't come till the nighttime, but it came just like this. They put a label, no packaging. They put a label on the outside of the box. And there wasn't even a piece of tape holding the flap closed. I mean, it got here. They must have just picked it off the shelf in a warehouse 30 miles from here, threw it in the truck, and drove it down. But it amazed me because it amazed me that they even have this stuff. Like, because I don't think they sell much of this stuff. Who still uses it? I don't.
Sure they got contracts with the various vendors about,
maybe,
not only do we want you to buy this, and this, but we want you to buy, these products that aren't as popular as well.
Maybe frame shops still use it.
But
I just find it amazing that they got it to me in 12 hours or something, without even having to put it in a box.
How many cards can you make out of a roll like that?
A lot.
Okay, hundreds.
Let's see. We could actually do the math. This can do 5 cards. It is an inch and a half. Slightly over an inch and a half. Let's call it an inch and a half for argument's sake. An inch and a half does 5 cards.
So 3 inches would do 10 cards.
So how many 3 inches are in 50 feet? So 50 times 12
50 is 600
inches. 600 inches divided by 3.
It's 200.
200 times 5 is 1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you do 1,000 cards with this. Okay.
How rare is it that the math comes out that nice round numbers like that?
That easily.
8.4. Yeah.
Now hold on. 50 feet. I think we did that wrong. 50 feet times 12 is not 600. It's 6,000, right?
No, 50 times 12 is 600.
Yeah, 50 times. Okay, so we did that right. It just seems like I should get more than 1,000 cards out of this.
I mean, 1,000 is a lot of
That's
cards.
1,000 cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. The math is can't argue with the math. But you would think, well, let's see. Yeah, that's about right. Because I think these boxes fit 800 cards. But that's without sleeves. These have sleeves on them.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's probably, you know what? I'm gonna look at my computer for a second and see how many
How many
files,
files you have?
because I've scanned them all in as individual files. So I can just go and see how many individual cards I have in one of these folders. Let's see, individual cards. I have done 330 individual cards. Okay. Which is about a third of a roll. I imagine I've used a third of the roll up. How's this for an exciting show? Doing the math on how much square footage takes to make paste up cards.
Logistics on supplies.
Yeah. I have to use Amazon for some stuff. Like, I can't get that stuff without Amazon anymore. It doesn't exist. New Jersey got good comic book stores. I've heard that.
Yeah, there are a couple of friends of mine. They broke up since, but they used to do they used to do a channel on YouTube called Comics Trips, and they lived in New Jersey at the time, and they'd go visit all kinds of different stores. New Jersey is just chock full of comic stores.
Yeah. Well, there's a few well-populated sections of New Jersey. But like I'm trying to think of any. You know, where I live, the Hudson River cuts you off from a lot of stuff. In New York City, cuts you off from a lot of stuff. So I've only got, and west is New Jersey.
Right.
A lot of New Jersey. So I'm really close to the border of New Jersey. So the amount of comic book stores in New York around here aren't a lot. Because as you, and the further, right where the further you go up in the Hudson Valley, the kind of less populated it becomes. Though some of the towns up the Hudson Valley have become really populated over the last 20 years. So maybe I'm wrong about that. Like where Daisy lives, I think there's a couple of comic shops. But that's an hour away from me. So I don't know if those would count as in the area.
I mean, it's a different area complete, but I was thinking, is Boston heavily populated with comic shops?
That's a good question.
Because I know of one in Boston.
I don't know.
News doesn't filter the rest of the world from Boston like it does in New York City either. So.
Yeah. But it's like, I'd rather drive the hour to a comic shop up near Daisy than to go into New York City to a comic shop. Because it'll take longer than an hour.
I would assume it's less hassle too, right?
Yeah. It'll be cheaper too. Because all it would cost me was gas going up there and a toll. But going into the city would cost me a fortune. If I was driving, would cost me a fortune in tolls and parking.
Yeah.
And take a lot of time. Depending on the time of day, it could take a lot of time. And if I took public...
It's like, I know DC works like this, and since I'm not as familiar with New York City, would it be more cost effective to go to like a central parking lot or whatever, and then take the subway in or train in, what have you, and then
that's what I have to do. I have to drive to Nanuet or Pearl River and take a train in.
Okay.
I do. That's the fastest and most cost-effective way.
The only time I've ever been in New York City was when me and Charles Vest went to visit with Mike Kaluta. And I'm glad Charles was driving, because if he wasn't, we'd still be looking for a parking space. He knew. He lived there for years, so he knew where everything was.
It is funny how people drive in New York sometimes. I can remember. I can remember. I was in college, up in Sullivan County. That's the way to go. Yeah, public transportation. That's the way I go. And we were I had my friend. She was from, what's the name of the town? I still remember, Andes, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of it before. Small town.
Yeah.
Upstate. Her high school graduating class was 9.
I thought mom was small. Wow. Okay.
Okay. So we decided to drive down to New York City. She's driving. She's got her old, this is 1984. She's driving a, 1970s station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And she's generally a fairly quiet person. She got in. She's driving in Midtown Manhattan like a cab driver. She's on the horn, yelling at people, changing lanes to get I was just like, holy cow.
Like, who are you?
Transformation. Wait, you know Charles Vest, Scott?
Yeah, I've known Charles for over 20 years. And I know Charles pretty well.
He does.
Yeah. He's building a new studio at his. He used to have a studio in Abington, and it's a public building. But then he's actually building his own private studio on his property now, where he built his new house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's made some rock walls and stuff where he's put some pictures of it. It looks pretty neat.
That's cool. He just said, cool, love his work. I haven't seen any of his, besides on his.
Well, he's not doing much in the comics.
Yeah.
Although there's a new book that just came out, which is The Art of Stardust.
Okay.
4-issue series he did, eventually became a movie, but there's an art book on that now. But boy, is he staying busy. He's doing a lot of book illustration over the past few years.
Comics are tremendous. Drawing comics is tremendous hard work.
It is.
Compared to illustrating.
Well, it's like a lot of the comics artists I like really don't do a lot of comics anymore. They're doing more illustration these days. Gary Gianni is another good example of that.
If you can get the illustration work, it's paid so much better, and it's so much easier.
Although they do have some pretty tight deadlines you have to work with.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying it's easy.
Right.
But compared to comics,
they have more potential of losing money on blowing a deadline than comics do.
Yeah. But when you're drawing a comic, you're drawing 8 to 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes 7 days a week.
Yes.
To make, let's just say $1,000.
Right.
When you're doing an illustration, you can work a normal day, 8 hours a day.
Right.
And instead of getting 5 days a week, and instead of getting $1,000, you're getting $5,000. So it's like there's not even any comparison between them.
Right.
If you can get the good illustration work.
Yeah, but a lot of the artists I like really have kind of transitioned more into that business aspect than actually doing comics. Like I said, Gary Gianni is a good example of that. William Stout's a good example of that.
Was paging through the horns of Elfland earlier today.
Wow, that's really early in Charles's career. That's like one of the first things he did for a major publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Like 70s. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Back when him and Mike Kaluta were roommates in New York City.
Uh-huh.
Back then,
the good old days.
In the studio days.
Back when you could still live fairly cheap in New York City.
Yeah, I hear all these stories about how cheap apartments were back then. It's like, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Not now.
Always in the best neighborhoods, but
That's true.
79 was that book?
That sounds about right.
I'm trying to think of the first Charles Vest work I saw, probably the early 80s. I don't remember what it was, though.
I would assume that probably the first thing most people saw from Charles was probably the Raven Banner graphic novel.
Nah, he'd done stuff before then, I'm pretty
sure.
sure.
But I'm saying unless you were a fan of his and you're just a casual comics reader.
I'm saying I remember being a fan of his.
Okay.
Not his illustration work, but his comics work.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to remember. What was the first stuff? What did he do before the Raven Banner? I don't remember.
He did a portfolio. He did some illustration work. I can't remember the first thing he ever got published was.
I'm sure
I
he
have
did
a book.
comics before the Raven Banner.
He worked on a few different things here and there.
Yeah, I don't know where I saw him though.
Can't remember if he did the Warriors 3 stuff in Marvel Fanfare before the Raven Banner came out. I'm not sure. I have a book that's got that stuff in it, but I'll lend it to the guy that's doing Charles's website for reference.
Maybe the Raven Banner was earlier than I think.
May have been. He did some work for some role-playing game companies that's very obscure. You know, unless you know what it is, you're not going to come across it. My memory's not as good on that stuff as it used to be.
I'm funny. I'm trying to remember what comics I know.
Well, one thing is like what I know versus what the average person has probably got exposed to is vastly different.
I would have gotten exposed to his Marvel work.
Okay.
That's what I would have known. I would think.
Because the first stuff he got published was definitely not from Marvel.
I would have known if he'd done any indie work stuff. Book of Ballads and Sagas.
Oh, that came along a lot later.
We'll have to look it up for next week.
He did some cover. I mean, he did some covers too that were spot covers here and there. It didn't do complete.
Spirit of Earth, Spider-Man books, but I remember him being well known when he did that Spider-Man stuff.
That's what bought his first house, was that Spider-Man graphic novel, Spirits of the Earth.
Wow! Imagine those days when something could, those days are over.
He did stuff in Marvel Fanfare. He did the Warriors 3 story arcs here. He did the Amazing Spider-Man 277, which is Cry of the Wendigo.
Okay, I think I was out of Spider-Man by then.
And of course, the one thing that really got him known was that cover for Web of Spider-Man with the black suit.
Oh, that put him over the top, definitely. Yeah. What year was Raven Banner?
80-something.
Okay, The Horns of Elfland from 1979.
He had some work that was published in heavy metal, or he tried to get some work published in heavy metal, but they said his work was too nice.
Yeah. I could see that not fitting. Did he have some stuff in Epic Illustrated, I wonder? Maybe
yeah, he did.
Sure okay, did. Then that's where I saw him. That's where I must know him from, is Epic. Yeah, that's it. So I'd know him from his Epic stuff, and then he did Raven Banner, probably, and the other superhero stuff. I'm going to look through those Epic magazines again, just because I haven't looked through them since the 80s, and I have them all.
Did you ever get Steve Bissett's Taboo series that he did?
Yeah.
It was like 6
I think I only got the first 3 books of that, and then I fell off it.
Gotcha. He did a couple stories that were printed in there, too. One was pretty controversial because it was one of the first.
Yeah, I was in college by then.
It was one of the first stories to deal with menstruation.
Ah.
And that was a taboo subject back then.
Right.
No big publisher. We're not now. So.
All right. Well, we should wrap up for the week. It's getting late.
Yeah.
So you guys all have a good week out there.
Don't read any comic books with wooden nickels.
And go to my Patreon and look at some of my art. The link's down below, I think, somewhere. I'm putting the link on every one of my videos now and mention it because that's what I got to do.
Self-marketing.
Yeah, no one else is going to market for me. That I have learned. All right, so everyone have a good night out there, and we will catch you next week.
Bye.